So TikTok uses my Wi-Fi, right? Did you see that?
Yeah.
And the guy was like, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the congressperson was framing it like that was a security implication, not
Right.
knowing that TikTok is an app that rides on a computer and it is an internet connected software that will use the available internet connection. So that's the kind of thing we're up against.
Or the eyes dilated. Does it track if my eyes are dilated? Welcome to another episode of the First Byte podcast, your guide to IT, web design, and marketing topics. I'm Nathan Cheatham, Director of Marketing at Evernet Consulting, and I'm here with Eric Burendorf, CEO of Evernet Consulting. How are you doing today, Eric?
Doing pretty good, you?
Good. I want to talk today about information privacy, and I know that you have a lot of information on this, and it's been a topic in the news recently.
It's a buzzword for sure. It's definitely a topic that IT companies can sell a lot of products and services on. Shamelessly. We try not to sell too much on the FUD, but it is important for businesses and business leaders to know where they fit into the privacy issue, the data privacy issue. You know, depending on the type of business you're running or a part of, you may be you're definitely handling data now. If you use a computer, you're handling data. You're handling your customers' data, and even your employees' data.
And as a business owner or just as a person, your information's out there. I mean, there's definitely two topics here. We have the consumer side of things.
Definitely the consumer side.
Everyone's a consumer.
If you have an email address, you're basically there used to be a term that didn't really take hold, but called netizen, net citizen, you know? So yeah, if you have an internet connected device, an email address, a phone number, somebody's got data on you for sure.
Right. And then there's the added aspect of being in business and what the responsibilities entail for that. I think this really stems back, the awakening of information and data privacy really came, what was it, the mid 2000s when the NSA,
like Snowden
whistleblowing on, the government is watching you and you have data out there that.
Yeah, I mean, it could really be traced back even further to like the phone companies and what they used to refer to the phone companies as Ma Bell, which, the phone company was a monopoly in the early 20th century. And then in the mid-century, they broke them up, and then you had all of these regional phone companies. All through that time, there were privacy laws that were coming around where how much could the government wiretap you? I mean, everybody has heard of wiretapping. And then there's laws that deal with how the government can wiretap. Certainly, individuals snooping on other individuals, that's definitely illegal. Privacy in the digital or the communication sense, right? Or public infrastructure or public service standpoint, that the privacy laws have kind of come up over the years. And I think that's pretty well defined. But then when you fast forward to the internet, now you have internet monitoring, internet snooping and data collection, that sort of thing. We're still kind of in this realm where the internet in a lot of ways still feels very new. And I don't know if I kind of feel like that's because there's the sophistication to the internet and technology and computers is really still not pedestrian enough where like normals, I call them normals, everybody not in the technology game, people really just don't care. People don't really concern themselves really with like encrypting their phone calls because they're afraid the government's wiretapping them. Just the normal person doesn't care.
What they do care about is someone getting their phone number or something and then incessantly calling or emailing them. When you got talking about not even just like the bad actors, but like salespeople.
Yeah. So normals start getting upset when they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
When the sheeple get uncomfortable, that's when they start getting aggravated. That's when the politicians start getting involved. So I don't know. I mean, we're kind of on a tangent in that regard, but I mean, how does this relate to TikTok? Well, I mean, you have social media. This isn't going to be a history lesson on social media. I mean, Facebook came around, I think, in the mid 2000s, late 2000s, and it was a really open platform. I mean, when you were first posting to Facebook, It was all public. I don't know if you remember that or not, but there was no audience settings where so everything you posted on Facebook was public. Then enough news headlines of people getting fired or not hired for jobs because of their social media profiles were being seen by prospective employers or employers, right?
Yep.
So then you had some privacy settings that came down from social media where it said, okay, well, we'll give you the power to post only so that your network can see that stuff. So then people started realizing that there was some implication to privacy and oversharing. And then it kind of felt like that was it for a while. What was really happening in the background was the internet is funded by viewership. It's a commercialized space where you've never paid you as a consumer have never paid a penny to Facebook. I'm guessing, right?
Correct.
I haven't either.
Yeah.
We see in the news today that Elon Musk is trying to come up with a pay model for the blue check mark or verified accounts. It is kind of coming around that maybe social networks will be pay for play. Up until now, social networks and internet sites have been supported by ads and marketing, right? And advertising. In 2016, I think there was a big controversy where social media was found that it could be used to sway political elections. And still, I don't think people really understand how that works. So the way it works is the political parties or affiliations or non-affiliations, right? So you can have people who want to push a body of an electorate body to vote for the anti-candidate. You know, I mean, there's all sorts of
it's swaying psychologically
and mass though, and mass, right? Yeah. It's groupthink,
right?
You know, and so taking my time getting here, but it's a little foundation building, right? Because when you look at Facebook, like what information do you have on Facebook? You're not putting your social security number out there. You're not necessarily putting your credit card number out there unless you're using one of their like app platforms to pay for an app. But by and large, you're not putting your medical records on there. So it feels inert. It feels like no big deal. It's like, okay, fine. Like I'm sharing the pictures of my meals. I'm sharing pictures of my family. Yes, I understand that everybody probably to some degree understands that at least there's some exposure from a social graph standpoint. So like if I'm friends with you and you're friends with this person, there's that 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, you know?
Yep.
So you can derive some things about that connectivity and stuff, but still like what information is important?
Well, one of the things that early on in my Facebook using, I had a friend kind of point out to me is like, you ever notice like when you go on vacation, you're like tag yourself somewhere. And then if someone was able to see that was at home, they could break into your house?
Yes. Short answer, yes. That if you advertise that you are not home, then anybody who might want to exploit that.
And that's a little more aggressively bad.
Let's bring this back to TikTok and China and the xenophobia around China. So China doesn't care if you're not home.
Right.
They're not going to dispatch local Chinese agents to break into your home necessarily. I mean, maybe if you were a government employee and we've seen plenty of movies about actual that kind of spy game type stuff where like you do break into somebody's home to try to exfiltrate some physical thing that is maybe in the home of. So definitely that's probably a piece of it, but they're probably using other levels of sophisticated state-sponsored spy tools like cell phone tracking and other things like and networks of actual people monitoring, right? So let's just bring it back down to social media and privacy, right? Most people don't really realize what privacy they have, and it is this social graph and it's everything that you like and everything that you dislike creates a profile about you. And the reason why the social networks collect all this stuff is because that graph is used by advertisers. So if you like Coke and you dislike Pepsi, well, Coke wants to advertise to you. And maybe even Pepsi wants to advertise to you in the way that they want it, but their ad may be targeted in a Coke versus Pepsi transition campaign or something, right? So that information is valuable to advertisers.
So one of the big things is like, what are the data points that can be collected? Well, you have a mobile device, and we talked about, going on vacation, setting your location in your post. Well, that's something that your phone kind of always knows. Your phone knows where it's at based off of the triangulation of the network that you're on. And so that's a data point. You're on Google Maps and you're in traffic and you're looking and it sees the dot of where you're at.
So like your phone knows where you are, but who controls your phone?
I mean, that's a good question. From me, I'm I'm thinking Apple.
Apple definitely could.
Yeah.
Could. I don't think they claim to not, specifically Apple.
Yeah.
Your cell carrier.
Yep.
Okay, so your cell carrier can now advertise and collect analytics on you. It was actually found that Verizon was selling that kind of data to third parties in an advertising sense.
Yep.
So your phone is the hardware layer, but then you have the apps, which is called the application layer.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is Google or Facebook doesn't know where your phone is unless you open the app.
Okay.
And some of this has been gray over the years, and Apple and Android have developed mechanisms to try to tighten up the privacy of the individual. Mm-hmm. Because back in the day, location data, apps could read hardware level location data without explicitly being open.
Right.
So this has been so evolutionary.
And you can still give permission to always allow...
You can, but in the early days that didn't exist.
Right.
The iPhone came out in 2007, and I would say, and I mentioned this before, there was no app store on the iPhone when it first launched in 2007. That actually came later, right?
Yeah.
So, this has been evolutionary. When apps first launched, metadata they call it, and when there's a problem, there's a response. So Google and Apple have built in these okay, well, let's sandbox the application. Let's give the user prompts when you've seen it on an iPhone. If you're an iPhone user, this app has been using your location while in the background. Do you want to continue doing that?
Right.
So that's all of that framework around that. But in the early days, none of that existed. And so, yes, the apps, the cell phone carriers, and the cell phone manufacturers were everybody was tracking you.
Right.
And even the web at large at that time, every time you went to a website, you were being cookied. You didn't even know. Every time you were getting a spam message, a spam email message, when you opened it, it would read a piece of code on the email and send back to the spammer that you've read the email.
Yeah, and marketers use that. We use that with our marketing as far as open rates, and we do.
If you're gonna pull back the curtain and share our tools, yes. But yes, we do see when emails are open. So all of this is part of this privacy conversation, right? But we are also talking about this at the consumer level. So TikTok, fast forward to 2023, TikTok is in the hot seat about user privacy. Okay. And we're kind of blitzing through this whole history, but it's important because Congress is saying TikTok has our data and China can have our data and control the data. The unfortunate thing is Congress doesn't fully understand really the scope of the data. Congress doesn't really fully understand really what they're fighting for, what they're arguing for. And not to make this political, but I don't know how you feel about just saying China is America's number one threat. I don't really like that viewpoint. I don't spend a lot of time subscribing to that because it's xenophobic. It feels a little bit racist. It feels a little bit of supremacy there. They're just another country with an economy. They make stuff, they sell stuff. Europe is the same way. The European nations are the same way. They have economies. They've got ideologies. They've got cultures. They make stuff, they buy stuff, they sell stuff. And when I see Trump get on this whole anti-China kick, and then I see the left and the right kind of both subscribing to that, then putting TikTok on the hot seat about the privacy. Don't forget, Facebook has screwed everybody over far more than TikTok has. TikTok is at least built with the learnings of what Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg has done to us, So it's a little bit of that. However, we have learned that groups can be mass manipulated by showing certain videos and themed videos, showing certain advertisements and themed advertisements. We've proven that a group of people can be swayed to like or dislike a certain politician. So that fear is real. That fear is real for sure.
And I remember the first time this came out, and I think it was after the whole Facebook ordeal. But if you dive through the settings of Facebook, you can find a kind of an output where it says they've determined your political standing, generally based off of I think it's liberal and then political party.
Sure,
so
yeah.
You can be a liberal Democrat, liberal.
Well, they for years have had a flat out data point or field where you could declare your political affiliation.
Right. But this is them looking at
Your likes and dislikes.
Dislikes, how you interact, and making a claim about you that sometimes is more real than what you think you are.
Oh, for sure.
Because it's all of those data points of like how you're interacting, how you're commenting, and what pages you're liking.
Right.
And so they boil that all down. And, you know, generally that goes to the advertisers on their platform. But what's to say some entity couldn't gain access to that?
If you are a social media user, by virtue of the tool, you are offering information about you, right? Preferential information, demographic information. I mean, if you post a picture of yourself, like somebody could derive whether you're white or dark or what have you, you know? How much fear do you want to inject in this? Like, if you're really afraid, just turn everything off and don't participate, right? But then, like, the thing that I worry about is false security. And that's what we see all the time, right? So, like, there's no, for example, cybersecurity. There's no one cybersecurity solution or vendor. There's no silver bullet. If anybody sells you on a single solution or single, you know, whatever, they're overselling you and under delivering. So to be afraid, whether it's Congress doing it on behalf of the people or the individuals taking up, you know, this fear of like, I want my information private. I want my privacy, and I want my information to be secure. And this is at the consumer level, by the way. This is just at the consumer social media kind of level, right? It's like trying to fight for privacy from your credit card company or your doctor.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the virtue of the service is privacy limiting.
Right. And realistically, and just like with cybersecurity, the best practice comes down to you and how you act. Because, you know, we're an IT company, we provide cybersecurity, we do that internally, and yet we still have phishing attempts that happen to our
knowledge in it. You're talking to the education piece.
Right. So being educational about what you're putting out there and what you're interacting with is real. It's like it's personal responsibility.
Responsibility. I guess that's kind of what I'm edging towards. And again, this is you and I are having fun having a conversation about TikTok, social media, right? We're not trying to sell anything. False fear of privacy and privacy control and data control, having Facebook control your like the United States government can make a request on any information in Facebook, TikTok, or whatever. The fears about TikTok is like, well, it's a China controlled application. Some people say China's in for the long game, where like they may slowly try to manipulate the thinkings of Americans by, you know, whatever. And that may very well be true. The practicality of the fear is what I take issue with. You know, if you you're better off having those, like, remember those informational campaigns in the 80s or 90s. What were they? It was like their star that was like, now you know.
Oh, the more you know.
The more you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I just tend to wish that the government would like stop spending so much time on the fear mongering, and if they really care about educating the people, like just putting out informational campaigns like, remember, what you read on the internet could be fake.
Yeah.
Remember what you read on the internet could be inducing you to hatred.
Right. Yeah. Well, remember when we were younger and we first got computers, first got the internet, and our parents would say, hey, just keep in mind, just because you read it on the internet doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah, well, what's funny is like our parents' generation, I don't know if they taught us that, to be honest with you, because I had, no offense, Dad, I've had some conversations with my father where I'm like, our parents grew up trusting Walter Cronkite on one of 3 news channels. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Journalism was a little different. I don't know if Walter Cronkite didn't have have an agenda of his own either. You know what I mean?
There were different standards back then, mainly because of the internet. It shifted in journalism from advertisement within your newspaper and having a collective. Like, you needed the trust. You needed trust of brands and trust of people. And then it turned to clicks and how many people you could get signed up in your bubble.
Yeah, and the other thing too is the internet brought the notion where you could be in the deep South and subscribe to the New York Times. Or you could be in.
There's positives and negatives to the internet, and we could go on about that for a long time. I've got many thoughts on it. But what I did want to do is transition us from, so like we've laid the foundation of personal responsibility of like what you put out there, like understand that people see it. Now let's go into this congressional hearing on from TikTok. So you talk about fear. You have a quote that you pulled out of that Reuters article.
Yeah, I brought up the website on the congressional hearing for TikTok. One congressperson asked in an angry, leading kind of way to the CEO, "So TikTok uses my Wi-Fi, right?" Did you see that?
Yeah.
And the guy was like, "Yeah, I think so. Yeah."
Yeah.
And the congressperson was framing it like that was a security implication, not
Right.
knowing that TikTok is an app that rides on a computer, and it is an internet-connected software that will use the available internet connection. So that's the kind of thing we're up against.
Or the eyes dilated. Does it track if my eyes are dilated? You have to be using the camera.
Right.
Active when the user has not turned it on. So
Right.
like they're not creating content.
Right.
They're just scrolling.
And that's one of those things where the operating system, Apple and Android have come to give us more understanding of how the hardware is being accessed. So if you're just scrolling through, although I don't know, I think it is just a global app setting. Do you know what I mean by that? So like when you first use an app and it wants to access the camera, it asks you on an iPhone, do you want this app to access your camera?
Right.
And then you have to allow, I guess that's a global. So I guess technically it could launch the camera and be observing you, but that's a lot of data. That is unlikely to be happening.
But that's also usually not going to happen until you click, I want to create content. Like I want to have, like TikTok has a video editor and recording.
No, clearly. But did the congressperson, was he alluding to the fact that users,
just regular users,
observed?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the kind of craziness. It's not technical. So I sussed it out in front of you, right?
Yeah.
So like when you first launch TikTok and you want to create your first video, the operating system, we'll just say Apple, says this app is trying to access the camera on your phone. Do you want to approve? And you say yes. Okay. So usually that happens when you're in the create mode to kind of contribute to the TikTok content, right? However, here's the expert in me telling you that is a global authorization of the app. So you could technically be scrolling content, not creating. And they could technically turn on the camera and probably observe you. I'm also telling you that's probably not likely because of the sheer volume of data, although China has become incredibly adept at harvesting sheer volumes of data.
Well, there's a lot of data out there, and there's a lot of people harvesting data.
Right. So it could happen. And would it happen en masse? No, probably not. If they were spying on a particular person, and there have been reports that TikTok has been, and Twitter for that matter, in the Twitter files, that journalists are being targeted and followed and observed and that sort of thing. So all that can happen.
But, okay, let's talk about this, though. Think about segmentation of audience. So you have to launch the create aspect of TikTok for it to connect.
Once you get prompted that TikTok wants to access your camera and you hit allow, that app in large can now use that camera whenever you want when you're running the app.
Right. And I don't think that that's a immediate question.
How many people do you think get into TikTok and they explore the app and most everybody contributes something? I mean, there's a large percentage of voyeurs that just are there to watch. I'm one of them, for example.
Yeah.
Although, no, I actually did create a TikTok that went viral.
There you go.
At one time. So even me, I'm in that group where I gave camera access to TikTok.
Right.
But are you saying like there's a large group of people that are doing that?
I think there's a good enough group of people that don't create content on TikTok and they're just there to watch.
Conversation point, like what percentage would you say?
You know, I don't know the data points, but
no, I mean give it your best ballpark.
I would want to say 50%.
Even 50% of TikTok's 100 million daily active users.
Oh, I'm saying 50. It's a lot. It's still a lot of data points to get, but if you're trying to cover your bases and get everybody, I'm just saying you would move that question earlier in the process if you had a nefarious agenda. And I don't think they're checking our eye dilation. You know, like I don't think that's what's happening.
I think 50 million active users is a good data point.
Yeah.
So even if half these TikTok users are not authorizing the use of the camera, I think the other half is still a sizable audience. Half the people to this argument are have authorized use of their camera.
Yeah.
Congress is grilling the CEO, are you watching our eyeballs?
Yeah.
You and I are maybe saying the same thing, and probably not en masse, right? I think we're in agreement in that. And all I'm saying is, technologically speaking, half of the people that have authorized the use of the camera, they think that it's only using the camera in create mode. Technologically speaking, I just am submitting that they could perhaps, at an individual level, observe your eyeballs without explicitly making it clear that the app's functioning that way. I'm going to go back probably and join you and say that that's probably not happening. The governments, both U.S. and a lot of other governments, they do things. So if it can happen, will it happen? So my job here is just to inform. I'm not selling anything on fear right now. Politicians are, and is what I think is the problem. I know that TikTok could be looking at my eyeballs because I've authorized the use of the camera. But I also am empowered with the knowledge of that.
Yeah.
So I'm just to make my point, I'm going to pass it back to you. I just wanted to be complete in my thought, right? Because you're hopping in with me, and I just wanted to say my job is to inform and just let everybody know that could happen.
Yeah.
So if you could happen, maybe don't change in front of your phone when you have TikTok open. I think everybody kind of knows, like, don't change in front of your phone.
Well, I mean, it's even I know people, especially in the technology realm, their laptops, they'll put a sticker, and there's even certain laptops that have a little like switch to cover the viewfinder because it could be turned on. It could be.
Amazon there's a bunch of people on Amazon selling these like for $2. They're double side. There's like their hardware viewfinder sliders. I bought one I'm a big Amazon Echo freak. I just have one in every room. I love the idea of just having the smart being.
Speaking of information privacy.
Yeah, exactly. But do I think that Amazon is not observing every conversation in my house? No, I conduct myself with the understanding that it's very likely that they could. Or do I think that the United States government is petitioning Amazon to tap into my Amazon Echoes to watch and observe my family? I conduct myself as if they are doing that. That's my lesson, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, the funny thing is, I talk to security experts all the time in our field, in the IT world, self-proclaimed cybersecurity professionals who encrypt and VPN the hell out of everything. And then I say, well, where do you put your cell phone at night? Bet you it's right next to your bed. Yeah. Bet you it's on your person every single day, all day long. I literally, the corners of their mouth go up when they realize whether they intentionally did that or not. So unless you're cybersecurity experts out there, unless you're sleeping with putting your phone in your refrigerator downstairs in your kitchen every night before you bed, like you're already having a monitoring device follow you all day long.
Right. Realistically, to get like off of that grid, you'd have to become one of those like doomsday preppers with, the amount of technology you'd have to shed.
Well, at minimum, you have to get rid of every single communication medium. So you would have to cut the wire to phone, cable, internet to the house.
Yep.
There are some technology. I mean, there's radio technologies and RF technologies that can penetrate walls. And a group at MIT was doing some research on how they can create a three-dimensional image of a house using Wi-Fi signal. They could just like sonar based. So that really is my point of this whole conversation, is that it's all there. Like the information is all there. So to be xenophobic and fear China and TikTok and what I think is going to happen, the next generation is going to fully understand that there is really no privacy. It's not that you're not entitled to privacy. I do support. I'm a freedom fighter at heart. So like I promote and support the constitutional protection to privacy, and certainly away from governments. Right? Commerce is different because when I see companies being targeted for privacy concerns and things like that, like the people elected to go to Facebook. You don't have to go to Facebook. If you don't want to be monitored on Facebook, like you don't have to go to Facebook. So I take issue with that kind of legislation and policy, right? I definitely I promote the protection of privacy and the will or the entitlement to privacy from governments. However, Snowden, as you pointed out earlier, revealed that we don't have privacy from our government.
Right. The depths of the collection from the government of our data is pretty expansive. Speaking to more on the corporate side, and let's talk a little bit about legislation here of what governments are doing. We've been seeing this GDPR.
GDPR, yeah. That's Europe.
Yeah, Europe.
Europe's faint attempt at making every single website have a cookie accept button.
Right. Yeah, and so we've seen that pop up with our, web browsing that we've done as normal consumers, and Europe's done the most, I think, and the US is kind of starting to catch up. And I think what it's doing is, like, we understand we've had this whole thing about individual responsibility of, what you do is out there, people are seeing. And
right.
We've also covered there are people that want your data.
I would argue a lot of people need your data to fulfill the virtue of the service you went to them for.
Exactly. So then the third part of this is like the control of it.
Right.
And I think what the government's trying to do is, rather than it just be expansive and it's just all over here, put a little boundary around it and give some protection to the customer,
the individual,
to say,
sure.
The individual, wipe it.
Yeah. So this is where, like, I know that I just spent the last probably half an hour seeming like I am saying nobody has privacy and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
And I may have even sounded like government's useless and whatever. So while I feel a lot of those things, what has come out of the government action and GDPR, and yes, Europe tends to lead because they are typically left-leaning and a little more progressive and a little more willing to, they don't have that Americana, fight for the individual, so to speak. So they're willing to kind of err on the side of alienating the mass to protect the mass. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So GDPR is, I forgot what it stands for, but it is the European privacy measures imposed on businesses where the business entities, and here's the gist: businesses should be, it's doing what businesses really should have done since day one, which is like, transparency. Hey, we're collecting this information. This is how we're going to use it. And by the way, if you don't want us to, you have the right to ask us not to.
Right.
And unfortunately, we've learned throughout history that businesses really aren't willing to act in the best interest of individuals and their consumers first. They are revenue driven first. It might have been unpopular for Facebook in 2010 for Mark Zuckerberg to have a blog where he was just completely transparent with, like, we love when you like movies and artists, because we can see what kind of content you like, so that we can sell that to advertisers and say whether you like hard rock or you like pop, and then we can advertise better to you. It's too bad, because I think if that honesty was naturalistic, you'd build stronger trust relationships with your customer. That's how we run our company, right? We're fully transparent, no ambush billing, no surprises, whatever. And that's how we build our trust relationship with our clients. You have the problem with the Mark Zuckerbergs and the like that didn't choose kind of transparency first. You tarnish the ability to have trust and do the right thing. So then government has to come in and they kind of stomp around and they cut with an axe, not with a scalpel. I mean, the good news is, like, the government's getting involved, kind of forcing the hand or making the issue of privacy present in present mind. I just kind of get a little perturbed when I see, like, politicians kind of speaking out of school and making significant policy changes that are imposed on companies and affecting individuals. Like, that accept cookie button that is on every single website that every one of us have seen now is completely useless. Because I don't know if you've ever clicked reject, but some news sites will just not deliver you the content. They'll say, sorry, we just won't deliver you the content if you aren't willing to accept our cookies. And so I would say that's pointless, because the contract between user and company is like, I'm here for it.
Right.
So I accept what comes with it,
Yeah, some aspects of the deliverable, like, just require the cookie. And so for you to just completely cut that out,
you have to get naked for your doctor to diagnose your problems. I don't know how else to explain it.
The way I look at it is the government is helping put the data, some boundaries around it. And if we have, from the business imperative, is you then need someone that is able to, if, I reach out to Amazon and say, listen, I set up an account and I gave you all my information. I no longer want to use your service anymore. Please delete my information.
Good example.
There needs to be someone on the other side that goes through and says, okay, we hit the delete button. Cool.
So the good thing is the government has brought this visibility to light and said, listen, no, we support the idea that the individual has the right to control their information, their privacy.
As of like July, 7 states, or is it 6 states?
So I pulled up this Forbes article. Iowa unanimously passes data privacy law. So this was March 17th, 2023, this article. And Iowa is the 6th state in the U.S. to adopt a comprehensive data privacy law. The 6 states being California, Colorado, Connecticut, Utah, and Virginia. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Iowa being 6. So California being a huge economy in our country, they're usually kind of forward leaning into this sort of thing. We live in Connecticut, you and I, so that's relevant to us. Virginia is where DC is near. So I would say it's a pretty big, you're not going to get 50 states to adopt this.
But you don't necessarily have to affect change at a level of online business level. And this is relevant to the residents of those states, but not the incoming internet to those states. So like if you're a business owner, you have a website and you're in Michigan, a state that's not listed there, you still have to comply with those data laws because someone from that state can then access your website. You could be hyper local.
So you're saying you'd be a Wyoming-based company,
yep,
and Connecticut's privacy law is going to apply to the Wyoming-based company?
It still applies because a Connecticut person can land on your website, and the moment that they land, there is data that is being transferred into your website.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an attorney, so I would say that there's going to be some lawsuits that suss this out. I think, the 50 states in our union agreed to interstate commerce framework where some laws apply and some laws don't apply.
Well, it's surrounding the data of the individual.
Like Connecticut can tell Wyoming, hey, like you got that, our Connecticut resident asks you to delete his data from your Wyoming-based server, and you got to do it. And Wyoming, and I suspect that we'll read about these lawsuits.
Well, but it's not Wyoming. It's the individual business there. So just like someone can sue you in a different state, and it falls under those.
Yeah.
It's.
Well, no, that's my point.
Yeah.
My point is that, and I'm not making a case either way.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, like, Connecticut may sue a Wyoming-based business and saying, like, you're in violation of this Connecticut law, but where's the jurisdiction? If the jurisdiction is in Wyoming where the commerce transacted, is that going to protect the Connecticut resident?
Right. And I'm not going to pretend to be.
I'm not either.
And I think this is where there's a gray area, and it's best from a business standpoint. And this is my kind of call, like this whole topic we've talked about and we've built on, data privacy, why it's important at an individual level, why the government is collecting. And so, I think there's an imperative for businesses to comply with like their web presence. And there are means to do so very easily.
Yeah, I mean, that comment you just made is to the audience who may be running or owning and operating a business, right? And it doesn't have to be a website necessarily. It could just be a business, where you're using computers, but it doesn't have to be like an e-commerce retail business.
It could be a brochure website, or you could be collecting information.
It could be a law firm.
Yeah,
you could be a law firm where you're just providing legal services, but you have a database of customers and clients that you're maintaining, and you have a client in Connecticut or whatever.
And while this is online, there's a lot of bar associations have specific requirements for their lawyers as far as like how long they keep their client information on file. And,
the bar ethics rules.
Yeah.
How the attorneys manage their practices. The American Bar Association typically leads in that framework, but the states then ratify their own bar.
So it's something to be cognizant as a business owner that you're collecting data, whether it's online, through your day-to-day operations.
As a business owner and operator, it's important for you to be aware of data handling laws. I don't want to say data privacy, data handling laws, because HIPAA for our health insurance clients, that's been around for 10 or more years, and that dealt with a lot of this. These laws here that are coming out, these are more for consumer. There's a lot of consumer protection. I mean, it's all for consumer protection per se. Connecticut actually, not to be biased here, but Connecticut actually has a really great fact page, and the string is really long, but I think if you search Connecticut Data Privacy Act, you'll find the ct.gov page. If you are interested, I would suggest you go here, and maybe we'll have a link to it on our website as well. But because all 5 or 6 of those states, I think the Forbes article said they're all kind of sharing the same framework. So it may be the same, and it likely is the same. And in my experience, it kind of is the same because it deals with like it's disclosures and rights, basically, So the Connecticut law, when does it take effect? July 1st, 2023. What does the act do? The CTDPA gives Connecticut residents certain rights over their personal data and establishes responsibilities and privacy protection standards for data controllers that process personal data. The responsibilities and data protection. So protection's a big word. So it's disclosures and how you shouldn't be like hoovering up all of this sensitive data and then like not securing your servers and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So
and the disclosure aspect and what this relates to on the website is your privacy policy and making sure that you're putting in it correct and updating information that says like, are you selling this data? Are you collecting it for what reasons?
Right.
And where is it housed? And who do I contact if I want my data scrubbed?
Right. And so you're referencing the privacy disclosure on a company's website. And that's the transparency piece.
Yep.
And that's what all of these laws are resulting in, is the transparency. But then don't forget, like, depending on the class of business, healthcare providers have been under this for years now, as I said. All of this legislation is leading towards the expectation that businesses are just going to be responsible with people's information and give the power back to the consumers. Like, having a meaningful channel for if the consumer says, like, I don't want you to collect my data, or I want to disappear from you, I need a reasonable venue to an unsubscribe. I need an unsubscribe link. And by the way, destroy my data. Yeah. There's and we see that now in a lot of the software that we support for our clients. There's an anonymize button. So you're able to keep the data because sometimes it's important. Well, some regulations require you to keep the data, but the retention laws can be in conflict with the privacy laws. So the software has to allow you to retain the data, but anonymize it.
Got it.
So we're seeing that, and that's a function of like law firm practice management software and any sort of business management software or accounting software. We're starting to see these features from the software vendors, because all of these laws pertain to those guys as well. You are facilitating the collection of this information. These laws apply to software companies. Fortunately, we're not seeing it come fast. Like, I'm still surprised that some major players out there have not fully kind of caught up with some of this, but we are seeing these buttons that say like anonymize data or destroy per GDP, stuff like that.
Gotcha. Well, I think we definitely have hacked this topic.
Oh man, we butchered it.
Yeah.
Did we bring any value to anybody here?
I hope so. So if we brought value to you, if informed you, entertained you.
Hopefully we entertained.
Yeah. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us on all social medias at EvernetCO.
Yeah.
And visit our website, evernetco.com.
Yeah, and if you have any questions or want to talk about, blow bag about any of this for any more time, schedule a discovery call with me or Nathan to talk about how this may impact your business or what have you.